August 30, 1933. Adolf Hitler stands before a sea of uniformed youth at a mass rally in Nuremberg, his voice booming across the gathering. This is no mere spectacle of unity, it is a declaration of biological conquest. Through the Hitler Youth and its female arm, the League of German Girls, the Nazi regime begins to transform its rallies into staging grounds for a twisted vision, a cradle for a future Aryan race. By design, boys are marched into paramilitary drills, indoctrinated in strength, sacrifice, racial purity, and absolute loyalty. Girls, meanwhile, are groomed for their destiny as mothers of the Reich, trained in domestic arts and taught to idolize childbirth and motherhood as patriotic duty. But under the veneer of youthfulness and celebration, something darker unfolds. The rallies, the propaganda, the uniforms. They all serve as recruitment and preparation. The regime casts youth as the biological future. A farm where bodies, ideology, and generation are inseparable. Through pressure, coercion, and social engineering, the Nazis will reshape German youth into breeding stock. For the Third Reich's ruthless, almost industrial project of racial reproduction. The Nazis built their racial state on the foundation of eugenics and selective breeding. In December 1935, the SS created the Lebensborn program, the so-called Fountain of Life, to ensure that Germany's future would be filled with children deemed racially pure. Heinrich Himmler, the head of the SS, who considered the SS the biological elite of the Reich, envisioned a new aristocracy born from carefully chosen unions. The program accepted only those who could prove Aryan ancestry and health. Applicants were screened for hereditary illnesses, mental conditions, or any sign of what the regime labeled racial impurity. A family history of disability or weakness could mean disqualification. The Nazis claimed that even qualities like loyalty and bravery could be inherited, and thus they sought to manufacture them through breeding. The regime put enormous pressure on women. Unmarried mothers carried heavy stigma in society. Yet Himmler sought them out if they were racially valuable. Lebensborn homes offered anonymity, medical care, and a safe place to give birth on the condition that the mother surrendered guardianship to the SS. The children could be adopted into loyal Nazi families or raised in state institutions, cut off from their origins. At the same time, the state criminalized abortion for healthy women while forcing sterilizations and abortions on those judged unworthy. In this way, Nazi ideology split society. To one group, motherhood was elevated as a patriotic duty, while another group was stripped of the right to reproduce. The program grew during the war. As casualties mounted, Himmler feared that Germany was losing too many racially valuable men. Lebensborn expanded into occupied territories, and German soldiers fathered children with local women who fit the racial ideal. Thousands of children from Poland, Czechoslovakia, and elsewhere were kidnapped simply because they looked German. These children were taken from their families, Germanized, and placed with new parents who often believed they were adopting war orphans. Himmler repeatedly described women as warriors of the nation, though their battlefield was the cradle. He believed that the survival of the Reich depended as much on childbearing as on combat. Nazi propaganda glorified mothers who produced many children, awarding them with the Cross of Honor of the German Mother, a medal that turned childbirth into a state-sponsored service. Posters, films, and speeches celebrated the Aryan family with blonde children clustered around smiling mothers. The message was clear: producing children was not a private choice, but a patriotic obligation. The Lebensborn homes, luxurious on the surface, were part of this wider campaign to bind women's identities to the regime's racial project. One woman's story illustrates how this system worked. Hildegard Trutz, a young supporter of the Regime joined the League of German Girls in 1933 and was praised for her blonde hair, blue eyes, and childbearing hips. By 1936, when she finished school, she was encouraged to do what the Nazis claimed Germany needed most: give Hitler a child. Trutz was invited to a Lebensborn home, housed in a castle in Bavaria. There she joined dozens of young women living under false names, all carefully examined by SS doctors. They had to swear their families carried no hereditary illnesses. Each girl was told to sign away all claims to her future children, who would belong to the state. The home was presented as luxurious, with fine food and leisure activities, but its true purpose was clinical, selective breeding. The women were introduced to tall, blonde SS officers, whose identities were kept anonymous. They spent days socializing and were then told to choose a partner who matched their own features. Trutz recalled her excitement. On specific nights, she and other girls were required to receive their chosen officer. She later described the encounters as acts of loyalty to Hitler rather than intimate relationships. When she became pregnant, she was transferred to a maternity home. After giving birth, she nursed her son briefly before he was taken away to be raised by the SS. She never saw him again. Her story was not unique. Around 20,000 children were born through Lebensborn in the Third Reich and German-occupied Europe during the 12 years of Nazi rule. Many grew up without ever knowing their parents. And after the war, most faced stigma and secrecy surrounding their origins. Nazi youth rallies themselves became breeding grounds. The League of German Girls was nicknamed the League of German Mattresses because of its association with sexual promiscuity. Leaders openly lectured girls on the importance of producing children for the Reich. In some cases, illegitimate pregnancies were celebrated rather than condemned. Parents complained that the movement undermined their authority and encouraged their daughters to disregard tradition. At the 1936 Nuremberg rally, nearly 900 girls from the League of German Girls returned home pregnant, after encounters with members of the Hitler Youth. By 1937, the situation had grown so visible that officials were forced to prohibit mixed camping, but the culture of sexual encouragement persisted. The Nazis had redefined morality. What mattered was not chastity, but the production of racially desirable children. For the regime, a young woman's highest calling was to bear children for Hitler's future. When Germany fell in 1945, the Lebensborn children carried the scars of their origins into a hostile world. Many were ostracized as Nazi babies, shunned by their peers, or hidden away in orphanages. In Norway, where thousands had been fathered by German soldiers, these children were sometimes labeled as traitors, punished for the circumstances of their birth. Others struggled with fragmented identities, never knowing their parents or learning too late that they had been kidnapped from their true families in Eastern Europe. For their mothers, the end of the war often brought lifelong grief. Some were vilified as collaborators, while others lived with the silent trauma of never recovering their children. The reality of these policies was far more destructive than the propaganda promised. Lebensborn homes claimed to provide comfort and modern care, but complaints about poor medical treatment circulated. Most women still sought abortions despite harsh penalties, and the program never reached the numbers Himmler had dreamed of. The official births within Lebensborn homes in Bavaria and other regions of Germany numbered only about 7,000. Far more children were kidnapped abroad and forced into German families. For the women, participation often meant exploitation masked as duty. For the children, it meant growing up with lost identities, separated from their families, and stigmatized long after the war ended. In the end, the Nazi breeding farms left behind broken families, stolen childhoods, And a legacy of shame. Himmler's dream of a racially elite aristocracy never materialized. Instead, the program stands today as a chilling reminder of how ideology can corrupt even the most intimate aspects of life, turning love, sex, and motherhood into instruments of a brutal state.